Hello, this is the read-along for Unit 3.01, New Materials and Technology, Explore a New Age for Art. Into the Modern Age. The Industrial Revolution began in Great Britain in the late 1700s. Steam power, fueled by the region's abundant coal reserves, was harnessed to mass-produce goods, initially textiles, that up until then had been fabricated manually. It didn't take long for this new technology to spread. Soon, steam engines were being used in mines, ironworks, sawmills, and other areas of manufacturing across Europe and in North America. So we've got the Industrial Revolution beginning in the late 1700s, fueled by steam power that was used to mass produce goods, initially textiles, that up until then had been fabricated manually. So they're mass producing, creating a lot of product that at first were textiles, which are fabrics, that up until then had been fabricated manually or made by hand instead of machines. Mechanization in industry kindled a similar transformation of the transportation sector. Iron-hulled steamships cut transoceanic travel time significantly, while on land, the steam locomotive presented a cheap, quick, and efficient means of moving passengers and freight. So moving to machinery in the travel industry also transformed the way we did things. Iron-hulled steamships cut transoceanic travel time significantly. So big ships that were run by steam power and made of iron cut travel time across the ocean. Transoceanic means across the ocean. Cut that travel time by a lot. And then on land, steam trains were a cheap and quick and efficient way of moving people and goods. The 19th century also produced a communications revolution. The invention of the telegraph and later the telephone offered instant transmission of information as well as personal messages over great distances. Mass circulation newspapers sprang up in almost every town and city, and the new art of photography provided pictures to go with the stories. So we have the new technology of telegraphs and telephones so that people could communicate instantly. And also mass circulation newspapers, so newspapers that got distributed to lots and lots of people in almost every town and city, plus photographs to go with the stories, so you could see a photo of what was being written about. Explore the modern age activity on the next screen to learn more about advances during the Industrial Revolution. So we have steam engines that are powered by coal, and they begin to replace sails for powering ships at sea. We have water mills and steam engines powering mechanical looms and textile factories. So machines that are making fabrics are now powered by water mills and steam engines. We have steam locomotives or steam trains that could transport large amounts of goods over long distances, large quantities of goods. The telegraph allowed for almost instantaneous communication across vast distances, so you could send an instant message across a large area of land. Daily newspapers kept everyone informed about current events. And daguerreotype photography provided images with a degree of realism previously thought to be impossible. So we used to rely on drawings and paintings for realistic images. Now we have photography. Shrinking globe and urbanization. The overall effect of these pioneering breakthroughs was to shrink the globe and bring people closer together, for better and for worse. European countries used their technological advantage to conquer and colonize vast territories in the non-industrialized world. Slave labor in the American South provided cotton for the era's burgeoning textile mills. Plentiful jobs in urban factories led to a rural exodus to cities from farms and small towns, putting a terrible strain on cities to provide large-scale housing accommodations, office buildings, and public venues. Innovative architectural designs to meet these new needs would represent radical departure from the styles that had come before. So we've got European countries that are making these big technological advances and using their new power and wealth to go to non-industrialized countries, countries that don't have a lot of factory and mechanization and electricity and so on, and conquer and colonize those places and then bring slave labor um, back to their countries to work in the textile industry. And remember, textile means fabric. Plentiful jobs in the urban factories led to a rural exodus. So there were lots of jobs in the urban factories, the factories in the cities, that led to a rural exodus, meaning people in rural parts of the country, which means living out in the country or in small towns, made an exodus, meaning they left those places that they lived and went to cities. And so then cities had to figure out ways to provide enough housing. And so architects had to come up with new designs to accommodate all those people. Louis Daguerre. Born in France in 1787, Louis Daguerre was an accomplished painter, printmaker, and set designer. He had a flair for the dramatic and opened a theatrical venue called the Diorama in 1822. Visitors to the diorama viewed scenes that seemed magically to change before their eyes. The effect was achieved when sunlight was directed through a series of skylights, mirrors, shades, and other devices, and then directed to shine through transparent layers of painted images projected onto a wall. By changing the transparencies in this large camera obscura, a bright sunny mountain village scene might be converted into a snowy vista as if the seasons had changed. While the public marveled at Daguerre's ingenuity, he worked on finding a way to make the temporary images permanent. In 1837, after years of experimentation and collaboration with his colleague Joseph Niepce, Daguerre produced a sharp, permanent photographic image called the daguerreotype. Explore camera obscura activity on the next screen to learn more about the device. So he used this thing called a camera obscura, which we'll learn about on the next page, to create art installations, basically. And then he had the idea that he wanted to figure out a way to take images from his camera obscura and make them permanent, meaning make photographs, which is exactly what he figured out how to do. So be sure and go to your content and click through this activity on camera obscura. Since the late Renaissance, painters such as Albrecht Dürer and Johannes Vermeer had used the camera obscura as an artistic tool. Camera obscura means dark chamber, and that is literally what it is. The dark chamber may be as big as a room or just a box. It has a small hole, sometimes fitted with a lens on one side that allows light to enter. Inside the box or room, opposite the opening, there is a place to mount paper or some other material upon which the light entering the box can fall. The light from the sun, a lamp, or another source reflects off an object or scene and passes through the opening in the camera obscura. The reflected light projects an upside-down or inverted image onto the object or scene onto the paper or other surface on the opposite side of the chamber. The artist may then trace the inverted image. When the tracing is done, the resulting image may be removed from the chamber, turned right side up, and used as an aid in creating a more finished drawing or painting. So this is the process of creating a camera obscura. It's a little confusing, but this basically is the process that Louis Daguerre used to make his art installations before he made his daguerreotypes. The daguerreotype. Determined to make permanent the camera obscura's projected images, Daguerre figured out a way to transfer an object's reflection onto a highly polished copper plate by exposing the plate to light-sensitive chemicals. The image was fixed onto the plate with another substance that stopped the chemical reaction. Daguerreotypes were precious, one-of-a-kind artworks, admired for their exquisite details and rich tonal variations. Unlike today's photographic process, there were no film negatives or digital files, so the artist couldn't make multiple copies. Also, because the surface of the daguerreotype was very delicate and could be easily scratched, people typically covered it with glass and sealed it in a small frame. The daguerreotype process produced mirror images, so any writing in the photo appeared backwards. Yet surviving daguerreotype examples show non-reverse text. Can you figure out how early photographers accomplished this? The answer is that there are two ways by which photographers could produce correctly oriented images. Some aimed the camera at a mirror and photographed the reflection. Others made an initial reversed photograph and then took a picture of that picture. Daguerre's training as a painter is visible in one of his earliest surviving photographs from 1837. In the artist's studio, he arranged a variety of objects in a carefully planned still life composition. Strong diagonal lines frame the picture and draw the viewer's eye into the image. So we're talking about these diagonal lines here. And here on the table that these objects are resting on. Daguerre's photograph presents a rich spectrum of tonal values, a soft and continuous blending of darks and lights. So we're talking about tonal values here. Light pours in from the left side of the image, revealing the intricate pattern and texture of the wicker-covered bottle. The broad spectrum of tonal values gives shape to the subtle folds of the curtain. Highlights and shadows reveal the smooth surface of the sculptures and render them three-dimensional. The impact of photography on painting. Well before the invention of photography, artists strove to improve their ability to depict lifelike images of people, places, and objects. Renaissance conventions such as perspective and observation from nature were still widely used. Yet photography opened up a world of new possibilities. Some painters embraced photography as a learning tool to help them translate the three-dimensional world into two dimensions. Others rejected photography as an artistic medium, believing it was a shortcut to traditional artistic representation. They disliked the permanent nature of photographs, which did not allow the artist to alter or rework the image. As photography evolved over time, a synergy developed between artists and photographers. Today, many artists use photographs for inspiration, while photographers use artistic conventions to push their images beyond simple reflections of reality. So this is talking about when photographs came on the scene. Before we had photographs, artists were trying really hard to learn how to make paintings really realistic. So they would use things like perspective, which we'll talk about in class, and observing nature. So trying to paint what you see and make it look exactly the same. And then photography came along and opened up a world of new possibilities. Some of the artists were like, yay, photography, and they used it to take photos and then create paintings from those photos. They were like, this will help me make a really realistic painting. And then others rejected photography, thinking that it was a shortcut and thinking that it didn't give them enough freedom to express themselves artistically. So as photography evolved over time, a synergy developed between artists and photographers. Today, many artists use photographs for inspiration, and others use artistic conventions to push their images beyond simple reflections of reality, meaning that they try to take photos in a more creative way that looks a little bit more abstract and not quite as realistic.